The Maddox and Sons boardroom smelled of old money and older grudges. The walnut-paneled walls loomed over me as my uncle, Charles Maddox, stood at the head of the polished table, savoring his power like a fine bourbon. It was 2018 in Dallas, and the quarterly family meeting had turned into exactly what I expected, my professional execution. I sat in the only modern chair in the room, a quiet victory for my 3 years as director of operations. At 30, I'd spent every ounce of energy dragging this century-old freight company toward the future. Automated tracking, cloud integration, real-time logistics. My closed laptop rested on the table, its brushed steel case gleaming in the afternoon sun. They didn't notice the emblem on its corner, a subtle sign of what I'd built beyond these walls. "Claire," Charles began, his voice echoing across the room, "your obsession with digital transformation has gone too far. This isn't some Silicon Valley experiment. We are Maddox and Sons. We do things the way we always have." My cousin Brooke, his daughter and self-proclaimed marketing prodigy, smirked from her seat. "We're a heritage brand, Claire. People trust tradition, not apps." If they'd opened a single industry report, they'd know modernization wasn't a fad. It was survival. Competitors had already embraced automation while we clung to paper ledgers like relics. "The numbers prove my strategy works," I said evenly, though my pulse throbbed. The decision was made long before I walked in. "Numbers?" Charles barked a laugh. "Your pet projects have cost us millions." In reality, my initiatives had saved Maddox and Sons $10 million, 0 cents in operational costs this past year. But truth didn't matter, control did. "If you'd review the long-term projections—" "Enough!" His palm slammed against the table, sending a cup skittering. "Effective immediately, you are terminated as operations director." The board, all family members who had never worked anywhere else, nodded in smug unison. My Aunt Linda, CFO by marriage rather than merit, didn't bother to hide her satisfaction. "You're fired," Charles declared, savoring the words like a toast. I rose slowly, tucking my laptop under my arm. They thought they'd crushed me. What they didn't know was that Maddox and Sons had just signed away its independence. Because my corporation was days from acquiring everything they thought they owned. "Please clear out your office by end of day." The words landed like a gavel, but I didn't flinch. What they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to uncover, was that while they clung to dusty ledgers and outdated methods, I'd been building something far bigger. Vanguard Nexus, my technology and logistics powerhouse, had spent the last 6 years quietly rewriting the rules of global freight. And as of this morning, the final move was complete. "Actually," I said, flipping open my laptop, "there's something you should see." The boardroom's massive display flickered to life with breaking news alerts. Vanguard Nexus acquires Maddox and Sons in landmark deal. Freight dynasty collapses under tech revolution. Claire Maddox exposed as industry disruptor behind Vanguard. Silence thickened like wet cement. My cousin Sienna's smirk fractured into disbelief. Aunt Linda's satisfied grin evaporated. What is this?" Uncle Charles stammered, his voice stripped of authority, his ruddy face drained to chalk. "Vanguard Nexus," I said evenly, "finalized its acquisition of Maddox and Sons 20 minutes ago." His mouth opened, closed. "Vanguard. But, Claire, you're—" "A Maddox," I finished for him. "Full name Claire Maddox. Professionally, I've been Claire for years. Maybe if you'd researched the company transforming this industry, you'd have seen me coming." Charles lunged for his phone, likely to call his lawyers. "This is impossible. The board would never approve." "The board?" I echoed, smiling faintly. "You mean the family loyalists who've been selling their shares to my shell companies for 2 years? They approved it this morning, unanimously." The screen cycled through headlines. Tech visionary returns to take heritage firm. Sterling strategy topples century-old empire. Claire Maddox claims 40% of global logistics market. Chaos detonated. Chairs scraped. Phones flew into trembling hands as calls went out to lawyers and financial advisors. anyone who might explain how their universe had just imploded. I didn't raise my voice, but every word carried like a verdict. Vanguard Nexus now controls 40% of international shipping through our digital platforms. Maddox and Sons was the last puzzle piece. Sienna's voice cracked. But you were running operations here, those projects. Research and development, I corrected smoothly. Every initiative you called a failure, every costly upgrade you mocked. They were beta tests for Vanguard systems. I closed my laptop. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have another board meeting. Mine. You were so busy mocking my ideas, I said evenly. You never noticed they were revolutionizing the entire industry. Uncle Charles's hands shook as he stared at the acquisition summary on his tablet. 15 billion? The share price? Impossible. Actually, I replied, projecting our financial statements onto the boardroom screen. Vanguard Nexus is worth far more than that. Maddox and Sons is just a small piece of our portfolio. Linda, her custom Armani suit now feeling like a hollow costume, finally found her voice. The board votes. The shareholder approvals. Illegal, I confirmed. Those investment groups that kept buying your shares, every one of them was a Vanguard subsidiary. Your own greed made it easy. Everyone was desperate to cash out at a premium. Not one of them had thought to investigate the buyers. My phone buzzed continuously on the table, a symphony of notifications from the business world. Wall Street Journal, exclusive interview request. CNBC, breaking news segment. Bloomberg, Vanguard Nexus reshapes global freight industry. Sienna, who'd spent years sneering at my proposals during marketing meetings, looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. The digital platforms we rejected, she stammered, are now industry standard, I finished. Vanguard Nexus built and patented every one of them while you were busy laughing at me. Those expensive failures, they killed? They were now multi-billion-dollar revenue streams under Vanguard's banner. Charles lurched to his feet, but the authority that once radiated from him had evaporated like morning fog. You planned this all along, he whispered. Of course I did, I replied coolly. When you shoved me into operations instead of letting me lead tech development, I knew Maddox and Sons would never evolve. So, I built something that would. The screen shifted again, revealing documents. Years of acquisitions, R&D blueprints, and strategic plans that had transformed Vanguard Nexus from an unknown startup into a logistics titan. Every time you blocked modernization here, I implemented it through Vanguard, I said. While you were guarding the past, I was building the future. Aunt Linda's voice cracked. The family trust is now under Vanguard control, I confirmed, along with your real estate, private banking arm, and every subsidiary. Maddox and Sons is now a division of my company. Charles tried one last time. You can't just take our company. Actually, I said, displaying the signed ownership documents. I already did. The headlines kept flashing across the screen like victory banners. Vanguard Revolution, how one woman redefined global logistics. Tech visionary behind Maddox and Sons takeover. Legacy freight giant falls to innovation titan. Sienna, ever the opportunist, tried to pivot. Claire, cousin, surely we can talk about leadership roles in the new structure. Claire Maddox, I corrected smoothly. Or Ms. Sterling, if you prefer. And yes, we'll discuss positions, entry-level positions, time to learn how modern business works. Entry-level? Her voice pitched higher. I'm the marketing director. We're the marketing director, I said, pulling up her department's performance metrics. Your last campaign burned $4 million 0 cents and delivered zero measurable ROI. At Vanguard, we make data-driven decisions, not family appointments. My phone vibrated relentlessly, flooding with notifications. The hidden giant, Vanguard Nexus's rise to power. Claire Maddox emerges as tech queen of global shipping. Inside the Vanguard Revolution, Charles slumped in his chair, the swagger that once commanded this boardroom reduced to dust. The other shareholders, he started, are thrilled, I cut in. We offered a 40% premium over market. They couldn't sign fast enough. I projected a new organizational chart on the screen. The ornate Maddox and Sons hierarchy had vanished, replaced by Vanguard's sleek, merit-based structure. As for your roles, I continued, voice calm but razor-edged, they're under review. Sienna, your new position is in customer support. Time to understand what clients actually need. Customer support, she choked. I have an MBA. From a university your father funded, I replied without missing a beat. At Vanguard, we value execution over pedigree. Promotions are earned, not inherited. Aunt Linda was frantically scrolling through financials on her tablet. The pension funds. The family trust. All secure, I assured her, though those bloated consulting fees and executive retreats will end. Vanguard runs on transparency and compliance. Charles tried for one last stand. The board won't allow this. I smiled slowly, letting silence sharpen the blow. The board, I said, no longer exists. Vanguard operates under a modern governance model, independent oversight, no more family rubber stamps. I closed my laptop, letting the headlines glow behind me like a coronation. Congratulations, I said softly. You've just been onboarded to the future. If you want to see how this power shift shakes up their entire world, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications because the next chapter is one you won't want to miss. I pulled up a series of documents, years of financial data exposing Maddox and Sons' decay under family mismanagement, declining market share, soaring operational costs, failed tech adaptation, contracts lost to innovative rivals. While you were all clinging to titles, I said evenly, the industry was evolving. Behind me, the display shifted to Vanguard Nexus's global footprint. Today, Vanguard controls 70% of international freight through platforms you all dismissed as unnecessary. Every system you rejected, every proposal you blocked, Vanguard built, patented, and scaled them. The truth rippled across their faces like a storm breaking. Their resistance had birthed their own demise. My phone buzzed with incoming messages. Integration teams mobilized, press conference at 2 p.m., new structure approved. I rose, straightening my tailored blazer, and let silence frame my words. Let's talk about your futures with Vanguard. Those willing to learn will start from the bottom. Those who aren't? HR is preparing severance packages. No one spoke. The dynasty they'd sworn to protect was now a division of my empire. One more thing, I lifted my laptop. Clear your offices by end of day. Digital transformation teams need the space. The irony tasted sweet. They'd fired me from my office, only to lose their own. Weeks later, the Maddox legacy existed only as a nameplate beneath the Vanguard banner. The grand boardroom, once a stage for their power plays, became an open innovation hub humming with energy. The mahogany walls replaced by glass partitions and touchscreens. Filing cabinets, gone, replaced with encrypted cloud systems. I didn't take Charles's sprawling corner suite. That relic became a collaborative lounge. My office was a minimalist glass cube overlooking the transformation, a symbol of transparency both literal and cultural. Mrs. Sterling, my assistant said, stepping inside, your family is here for role assignments. They filed in slowly, stripped of bespoke armor, awkward in business casual. Another Vanguard policy, efficiency over vanity. Sienna's eyes burned with resentment. Charles looked hollow. Linda clutched a notebook like a lifeline. This wasn't revenge. This was progress. Welcome, I said softly, as headlines blazed across news feeds. Vanguard Nexus completes Maddox acquisition. The future has arrived. I smiled faintly. The future, after all, had my name on it. Welcome to your first day at Vanguard Nexus, I began, pulling up their freshly signed employment agreements. Let's review your new roles. Charles, now stripped of his CEO title, sat stiffly, jaw clenched. This is unnecessary. We have decades of experience. In running a company into the ground, I countered, projecting a graph onto the wall. Maddox and Sons' market value plummeted 60% under your leadership. Vanguard's up 400% in the same period. I clicked through their assignments. Charles Maddox, operations analyst. Linda Maddox, accounts payable clerk. Sienna Maddox, customer support representative. This is insulting. Sienna shot up in her chair. I ran marketing. Into the ground, I said coolly, revealing metrics. Your last 5 campaigns delivered negative ROI. At Vanguard, results matter, titles don't. My phone buzzed. Integration, 40% complete. Legacy systems migration, on track. Retraining programs, launching. Your salaries, I continued, will match your new roles. No more bloated executive pay. Linda paled. But our commitments, our lifestyle, should have been managed better, I replied. The jets are being sold, car services terminated. Company-paid apartments canceled. I tapped another folder, scrolling through years of indulgent expenses. Private club memberships, family vacations disguised as business trips, shopping sprees labeled as client entertainment. HR, inappropriate charges will be recovered. HR can set payment plans. Charles's face flushed crimson. You can't expect us to live like normal employees? Welcome to meritocracy, I said, tone soft but lethal. Oh, and your Hampton estate? Bought with company funds. Vanguard's audit team has proof. Sienna, ever the survivor, tried a new angle. Surely, with my experience in client relations. You mean the clients who left because you refused to adopt digital tracking? I cut in, pulling up churn data. Customer service will teach you what they actually need. My phone pulsed again with headlines. Vanguard Nexus modernizes Maddox legacy. Tech Titan forces shipping giant into digital age. Claire Maddox ushers in logistics revolution. I closed the screen and smiled faintly. Orientation begins now. Welcome to the future. The silence that followed wasn't defeat, it was realization. They weren't titans anymore, they were employees. And I was their boss? I'll continue, I said, voice steady as glass. Charles, you'll be shadowing our operations team. The same one you fired last month. His jaw clenched. I didn't pause. Linda, accounting needs help with data entry. Sienna, your customer service training begins in 1 hour. And if we refuse? Charles asked, summoning the last shred of defiance in his voice. I smiled faintly, letting the silence cut deeper than words. Then you'll be terminated without severance, and our legal team will immediately begin proceedings to recover the funds you misappropriated. I let that sink in. Your choice. The room went deathly still as reality settled like a weight on their shoulders. One more thing, I added, tapping my laptop. A new organizational chart appeared on the wall, a sleek, merit-based structure replacing the bloated hierarchy they'd ruled for decades. At Vanguard, every role is subject to quarterly performance reviews, I continued. Underperform, and you're out, family or not. How long? Linda whispered, her voice barely audible. How long were you planning this? I turned my screen toward them, revealing Vanguard's meteoric growth over the last 5 years, while they'd been mocking my expensive experiments. Since the day you voted to kill the Digital Transformation Initiative, I said coolly, while you guarded your outdated empire, I was building the future. The irony burned sweet. Every innovation they'd rejected had become the foundation of the company that consumed theirs. Welcome to Vanguard Nexus, I concluded, closing the laptop with a crisp snap. Your new employee badges are waiting with HR. Orientation starts at 9. Punctuality matters here. They filed out slowly, hollow-eyed in business casual, a uniform they once mocked as beneath them. I checked my phone one last time. A message pulsed from my executive team. Global logistics platform launch successful. Maddox integration, ahead of schedule. Future secured. I exhaled, not in relief, but in satisfaction. Sometimes the sharpest revenge isn't just taking over the family business. It's dragging it into the future it fought so hard to resist, and making them watch every second of it happen under your name. What would you have done in my place? When my own family underestimated me, mocked my ideas, and shut every door, I didn't argue, I built my own. I turned rejection into a blueprint for dominance. Now, the same people who fired me are working under my leadership. I want to hear from you. What do you think about the way I handled it? Did I go too far, or was this justice served cold? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters because this isn't just my story. It's about anyone who's ever been told they weren't good enough. Here's my advice to you. Never let someone else's disbelief define your destiny. If they won't give you a seat at the table, build your own. Every no you hear can either break you or build you. It's your choice. Start investing in your ideas today, even if no one believes in them yet. If you want to see how this story unfolds, the wins, the battles, the lessons, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Join me on this journey of proving that resilience, strategy, and patience always pay off. Your move. What would you do if family loyalty collided with ambition?